Scars on my skin, scars on my heart, scars on my soul, reminding me of myself.
I'm going to start off and apologize for the angle or if anything's weird about this video. I'm currently filming on my phone. So I just wanted to do a video about my story. I have struggled with not only eating disorder, but self-harm as well, and borderline personality disorder for most of my adult life. So I just wanted to make a video about some things that have contributed to it, put my story out there because I've seen stories like this from other people and it really helped me. So I'm hoping that by doing this story I can help somebody else, hopefully, and yeah, that maybe just one person can be helped. This whole thing will be worth it if I can just help one person through my story. So things that contributed to my story really started in the 7th grade. When I was going into 5th grade, my family and I moved to a different city, moved to a different school, and this school was odd. It was a K through 12 school, so everybody was really in one building together. And during those first 2 years at that school, I made some friends. I made quite a bit of friends, actually. It was a whole group. I really had fun. They did, looking back now, I realized that they, even then, were bullying me a little and taking advantage of me. But in my 7th grade year, which I currently refer to as the worst year of my life, that was really taken up a notch. The two girls that kind of led that group decided that they didn't like me for whatever reason, and so the entire group really turned on me. So during that year I had all of one friend that whole year. So that year they were torturing me, they would bully me, they would say mean things to me, just be completely awful. Of course, telling the principal and everything didn't work. They completely got away with everything they were doing. And, I would go home every single day crying. It was really a horrible experience. To be picked on not only for my weight, which is something I've struggled with all of my life, but for the things I wore, the kind of things I was into, the things I liked, just everything they could pick apart and use against me, they did. So, during that same year, my sister ended up with school phobia. She ended up having to go to a inpatient hospital and staying for a week for depression and the school phobia, of course, and other things like that. She stayed there for a week. After that, my father also had to go to an inpatient hospital for, I'm not sure how long, I don't remember that, but he had to go and stay there for suicidal thoughts and things of that nature. That same year, the worst thing about that year was that my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. As someone at that age, especially, I've had anxiety my whole life. It was terrifying, the thought of her not being around, because at that time in my mind, of course, cancer equals death. I mean, there were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Luckily, she did pull through that amazingly well, but at that time, I saw that everyone around me was having all these problems. My sister, my dad, and my mom, and of course, with what happened to my mom, that was all complicated. So at that point, I made one of the worst decisions of my life and decided that I would not burden anybody else with my feelings, with what was going on with me, with the extent of the bullying. I would just keep all of my emotions inside, lock them up, and deal with them myself. so that I wouldn't have to burden anybody else who already had their own problems with my problems as well. So after that year, things got a little better. I was still bullied numerous years throughout school, um, but I made it through that. Um, Things started looking up quite a bit after that. I was still dealing with my emotions by myself. I still wasn't letting anybody in to see what was wrong with me, just because that had become more of a habit, to do that. And looking back now, I can say that throughout a lot of my life, I have displayed self-injurious behavior. When I would get angry or upset, I would pull my hair, I would hit myself in the head, hit my head against walls or whatever. And I don't know. To me, this sounds ridiculous. I know it's not, but just different. I would bite myself, different things like that. So things began to get worse again. Here, I believe it was my senior year of high school. My father was going downhill fast. He has had multiple surgeries, hip replacement surgeries, knee replacement surgeries. He's on disability, and he just wasn't dealing with all that very well. He got addicted to painkillers, and so me and my sister were coming home from school every day wondering whether or not we were going to find him dead. At one point in time, over the span of 3 days, he took over 80 pills, 80 pain pills of a prescription that he had. So it was just, we didn't want to even come in the house because we didn't know if we were going to find him on the floor dead or not. So after that, after going through that for a while, and that anxiety and the constant fear that he was going to do something, that he was going to hurt himself, I developed in my mind something that I can't say anything wrong to him. I can't criticize him for anything. I can't get angry at him for anything. I can't say anything, because if I say something and he kills himself, that's my fault. That's on me. That is completely my fault. And things like that, I still have those feelings to this day. Still worry about him all the time. Still have anxiety about him. But after that, my mom decided that a divorce would be the best for everybody. So they got divorced, and my dad moved back to Alabama with his parents. And so still, that was supposed to be easier on everybody, but it was still hard on me, even though I wouldn't say anything. Because again, those feelings of if I said or did anything wrong, and if he hurt himself, then that was my fault. After that, my mom, quite a while after that, my mom decided to start dating again. She went out with this guy, and they ended up getting married, and he ended up moving here. We got along to begin with, but he was just a baby about a lot of things. And of course, I know I probably was too, because I felt like he was taking my mom away from me. I felt like no matter what happened, she would choose him over me, and that was not a very good feeling at all. That upset me to no end. And he would be immature about a lot of stuff. I would be immature about a lot of stuff. And I remember him telling me clear one day, I hate crying in front of people. I hate for people to see me cry. To me, it's a weakness in my mind sometimes. And I just don't like it. I feel ridiculous. I feel foolish. And it didn't help that sometimes I do end up crying in front of people. It didn't help that he would always tell me, well, only babies cry. You shouldn't be crying. Only babies cry. You have nothing to cry about. Or, you have nothing to cry about. Your life is fantastic. You have a good life. I was on my own. I was on the streets by the time I was 18. I was kicked out of my house, and I lived by myself. I get that. And you don't think that I don't tell myself every single day that I don't have a right to be depressed. I don't have a right to do this to myself, because there are a lot of people out there who have it a lot worse than I did. You don't think I tell myself that every single day, every single time I get upset, and you're telling me this now, only reinforcing that idea, which only makes me feel worse and makes me feel like I can't trust anybody with my emotions, and makes me feel like I can't talk about my emotions to anybody. So he really didn't help, and that was actually when he and my mom were married, was the time that I hurt myself, deliberately, knowing that I was hurting myself for the first time. I used to take the pins, the buttons off of a lanyard I had where I worked, and scratch myself across the wrist with those lanyard, or those buttons with the backs. I would just, sometimes I would be so angry at myself, I would just go at it. And I would wear wristbands all the time. I stayed within one area most of the time. And you know, it was a range of emotions, a range of reasons for why I was doing it. It was to punish myself. I would be angry at myself if I got angry at someone else. I would fly off the handle, say things I didn't mean, do things I didn't mean, and it was like I was just a spectator. It's like I had no control over it whatsoever. I couldn't do anything to stop myself, and immediately afterwards I would be upset. I would be horrified by the things I said and the things I did, and I would just cry and cry, and then I started hurting myself, and that would be my punishment. The pain from it was my punishment. I deserved it for what I did and said, and so that's where that part came in. And then there were other times when I was just so upset, I would be on the verge of tears, and hurting myself like that would help me not to cry. It would help me try and carry on with the rest of my day and not just squall the whole time because somebody said something to me, somebody, you know, did something, whatnot, that just completely upset me. And I've always been sensitive. I've always had a very thin emotional skin, and so things like that just devastate me, and things that normally wouldn't bother somebody else, but to me it's just horrible. So eventually after that, it wasn't enough. Scratching with pins wasn't enough. So I began to try out different things. I tried to use an X-Acto knife at one point. I used these little blades that you get out of the hardware department at one point, until I settled on and found razor blades. Razor blades like you put in razors and use for grooming and things like that. So I would get the pack of double-edged razor blades, and I graduated to that because the scratching, the pain, that wasn't enough. The blood is where it was for me. I had to see that blood coming out of myself, and it was like that blood was it contained all of the emotions that I couldn't let out, all the emotions that I kept inside, that just packed and packed and packed until it was boiling over, and I couldn't tell anybody about it. All of that emotion was released through the blood, and the more I bled, the better it was. And I've scared myself so many times with that too. I'm always afraid that I'll go too deep. I'm always afraid that it won't stop bleeding. I have cut myself quite deep before and terrified myself with how much it was bleeding, and just the thoughts. Sometimes I'm like, if I just go deep enough to maybe just nick a vein, that'll be enough blood for me, and it won't be hospital worthy of an injury. But that's not good. That's not a good train of thought, because that can lead you accidentally killing yourself um, by having thoughts like that. So I don't know why I started. I started hurting myself with the February, I was 20, that February, I started hurting myself, and I've been struggling with it off and on for 5 years now, and it's just been a one day at a time battle. I've actually have been clean for 7 months now. That has been encouraged and continues to be something that I'm holding to because of, just an amazing person that I met, and I I just, just the things, some of the thoughts that run through my head scare me too. Like, sometimes I kind of entertain suicidal thoughts, but not really suicidal to, like, I really want to kill myself to get away from everything. It's more like I want to end up in the hospital through a car wreck, through, whatever, maybe going a little too deep with the cutting, to end up in the hospital to see if anybody really cares about me enough to come visit. A way to weed out the people who don't really care about me. Because in my opinion, I view people as not, generally just not caring. I see myself as someone who's not worthy of being cared about, someone who's not worthy of being loved. I don't like the way I look. I don't like who I am. I don't like the way I think or the way I act. To me, it's all horrible, and I just don't see how anybody at all could care about me or want to be around me. So I struggle with that as well, and those thoughts do scare me too. And just, I'm putting all this out there because I really want to help other people. I want to warn other people. If you think that this might be a good solution to your problems, that it might be good for you to start hurting yourself like this, just don't. That was another one of the worst mistakes I made in my life, was ever starting, because it's addicting. You think that you'll do it maybe just this once, or just one scratch, or just one cut, but that's not it. That's not where it ends. It's so addicting and so hard to stop. It becomes this addiction that owns you, that controls you. Every time something happens, those thoughts are constantly in your mind, and to this day they are constantly in my mind, and I think that's something that will never go away. I will always have these urges. I will always have these thoughts, but I have to fight them. And that's how you overcome this, is just fighting them one day at a time. So if you are struggling with this, if you are going through this, just know that there are people who care. There are people who care about what you're going through and want you to fight to stop this, to get better. I want you to get better. I know it's not fun. I don't want anybody to go through all of this. I don't want to see anybody else having the issues that I've had. So I hope that this video helps somebody. If this video helps even one person, like I said, it would be worth it to me. And just know that there is hope. There is help. If you don't have a support system, go out and find one. There are people who are willing to help you. It's just a matter of finding them. So, with that being said, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. If you just want to talk, feel free to just talk. I will be more than happy to talk to you. But please, no nasty or hateful comments. That's just not not the way to go about something of this nature. And that's one of the things that's placed such a stigma on people who do hurt themselves, and people who are struggling with this. It makes you feel alone. It makes you feel like you're the only person in the world who's going through this, and that nobody understands, and that nobody will take you seriously. But that's not true. There are people who will take you seriously. There are people who care. And I'm one of those people. I care, and I don't want this to hurt anybody else. So if, just let me know if you want to talk. If you have any questions or comments, like I said, just let me know. Alright, bye.
And if I let you in, you'll tear me apart. So just hold me, wrap me in your arms, don't let